Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. We are going to be focusing on the graphing feature of GeoGebra for this tutorial today. So we aren't going to talk about every single tool that you see available on graphing, because some of the tools that we see are more useful for geometry or some of the other GeoGebra resources, even though they all appear here on the screen. So we're just going to go over kind of the most useful graphing tools today. All right, so one of the first things I want to show you is over here on the right. If you click on this little guide, we have some options that we can change for our graph. So the first one you'll see here, we see this is for the axes, so we can make them disappear if we want. Typically for graphing, we keep our axes on there, but just so you know, they are available to remove. Then we can also look at our actual grid. We can make it so we have no grid at all, but then we have our normal Cartesian plane, which is what it normally starts on. We have polar, and we also have isometric. So those are all there depending on what course you might be using the graphing for or what content you're looking at the time. Then looking at these settings over here, there are some things that we can change on the graph. If you want to set specific dimensions for your graph, you want a specific window, you can set that here with your X-min, X-max, Y-min, Y-max, and this works just the same as a handheld graphing calculator to set your window. But you can also do that just by using these plus and minus zoom buttons if that is what you would prefer instead. And then again, here's another way that you can make your axes appear and disappear if you would like. You can change some style if you want, and just some other style options here. Then there's also some different features for the x-axis and y-axis. For students, they don't typically need to know these things, because usually when we're graphing, we just use the main features that we already know. All right, so let's go ahead and X out of that, and we are going to get started here. So if you look on the left, there is an option for input. And when you input, there's kind of some different ways that you can do this. So one thing that we might want to put into our graph is we might just want to type a point. So I can add my parentheses and just type a point, and you'll notice it appears here over on the graph. But another way we can add a point is by clicking on this tool right up here, and you'll see when we click up here there's lots of different options that we could choose from, but to start we're just going to look at a point. So using that tool now, I can click anywhere on the graph to make that point. Now let's say I plotted this point but I wanted to move it. Again, I can either come to the box here and just change the coordinates, or going back to my mouse tool, I can grab the point and I can drag it anywhere on the graph that I want it. And it usually helps you plot it on those nice points. You'll notice when I move over it, it kind of clicks the point into place, but you don't have to have them on those nice spots. You can also move them really anywhere that you would like them. All right, the next thing we can do for input, we can input equations using just simple y equals format. So let's say we wanted to make a line. I'm just going to do 3x minus 4, and there is our line. But again, if we wanted to, we can use a tool up here. So here, again, you'll see there's so many different tools that we can use, but we're going to start with just a basic line. And for a line, to make a line, we need to have at least 2 points. So when we're using this tool, we're going to click 2 points, and you'll notice it's already showing me where my line will go depending on where I put that second point. And I'll plot it over here, and now we have another line. We can also use function notation. So if I wanted, I could type it as f of x instead, and then type whatever I would like. So we'll say f of x equals 2x minus 3. All right, and so if you'll notice here, what it actually did is because I already had a function up here that was f of x, it changed this one to g of x so that we didn't have any interference in our notation. So if we wanted even a new line, we could use a new variable, and we'll say h of x equals negative 4x plus 1. So when we're using this function notation, we have to make sure that we're using different variables to get different lines. And so when we're looking at our graph here, if there's something we see on the graph that we just don't want to see in this moment, you can click on it over here on the left, and it's going to make it appear and disappear. So you can kind of add things and get rid of things as you want. Or if you want to delete something altogether, you can click on the 3 dots and you can just click delete. So let's go ahead and delete these so we have kind of a fresh slate looking at some of these other tools. Okay. Now we are going to look at some other points. So let's say I have y equals x squared plus 5. Okay, so right now it's not really on the graph too well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my move tool and I'm just going to drag up so I can see my function nicely. And again, if we want, we can zoom out some, that way we still see the origin if that is your preference. All right, so something else we can do here when we click on point, something that we might want to know is we might want to know the extremum of our function. So we can click on the function that we have in any spot and it's going to tell us the extremum. So in this case, because we have a parabola, we only have a vertex. And so what it did is it plotted that point on the vertex, and now it tells us over here on the left side what the coordinates of that vertex actually is. We can also do the same thing with our roots. So we would click roots, then we would find our function and click on it. And now here it's telling us undefined, and that's because with this specific parabola, we don't actually have any real roots. Okay, so let's see now what would happen if we changed our equation so that it does have real roots. So let's change the function there. Now what you'll notice is over here on the left side, it changed our vertex and it gave us now the roots of our function. So anytime we change this equation that the vertex and the roots are being based off of, it's going to change those values here as well. All right, one last type of point we're going to look at are the complex numbers. So again, with the complex numbers, we're just going to select a position somewhere on the graph, and then it's going to tell you what that point is over here. So if I want to plot another one, I can move it over here, and we can just plot those anywhere that we would like on the graph. All right, so that about covers what we're going to look at for points. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these again to get them out of our way. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at are some different types of lines. So we already looked at the line here. What I want to look at next are these lines over here, so parallel and perpendicular lines. So if I want a parallel line, I can start by plotting a point, and so what it did right here is it plotted a line parallel to the line I already clicked on, which in this case was an axis. So if I have a different line, let's say I have this line right here, and I want a line parallel to this new line that I created, I can go to the parallel line tool. I'm going to plot one point to show where my line is going to start or where it's going to pass through. Then I'm going to click the line that I want it parallel to, and it's going to create that line for me. And so perpendicular lines work the same way. So I'm going to select perpendicular lines. I'm going to plot my first point where I want my line to go through, and then I'm going to select the line that I want it to be perpendicular to, and there we see we now have a perpendicular line. Okay, so now that we've looked at parallel and perpendicular lines, again, let's delete some of these. The next thing that we're going to look at are the lines of best fit. And so this is actually a nice tool for statistics as well. I'm going to leave some of these points on here. So let's say we have a cluster of points. Let's see, we need to finish deleting here. Delete. All right. So if we create some points, so let's just place some on here. So we have a cluster going up this way. We're just going to create a bunch of lines here. Okay, so now we want to create a best fit line. So I'm going to select the tool. Then I'm going to select 2 points through my line that I think kind of represent the best fit line well, and it's going to create that line for me. So obviously this relies on you having to click on those points. So this goes kind of in line with students estimating where the line of best fit would go, selecting 2 points that represent the line well. All right, then the last thing we are going to look at for lines is the slope. So to calculate the slope of a line, what we do is we click on this tool up here and we go down and we click slope. Now we just need to select the line that we're calculating it for. So we would click this line right here and it shows us on the graph. So we can also just see our slope by looking at the equation of the line over here. But the benefit of this tool is it helps students see it on a graph and recognize the slope as the rise over the run because it shows that sort of stair step here on the line. All right, so now to kind of finish up this tutorial, there is something that we looked at in the initial video if you watched kind of my basics tutorial of GeoGebra, but I'm going to show you one more time here. So over here on the right side, if we are done with a graph and we want to start a new file, which can be easier than just deleting everything one at a time, we can just click new here and that will start a new file for us. We can also click this open and this will help us get to past graphs that we've created, so clicking on this will just get past files that you've saved. Here we can actually save it so we can access it at a later time or continue working on it later. We can export it as an image, so if you want it as an image that you can embed in a document or submit as an image, then you can export it here. And then we can also share it in a few different ways or download using different file types or just print it. So there are many different options you have here for what you actually want to do with your graph once you're done. All right, well, thank you for joining me for the tutorial on graphing today, and I hope you'll join me for my next tutorial.